Admiral Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station called Nexus Prime. The place was huge beyond anything humans had ever built. Metal walls stretched up so high he could not see the ceiling. Strange lights moved in patterns he did not understand. The air smelled different here, like metal and something sweet that made his nose itch. Captain Ryan Bell walked beside him, carrying a heavy case full of data files about Earth and human technology. Behind them came Dr. Lisa Parker, the smartest person Jake had ever met when it came to studying alien life forms. She kept looking around with wide eyes, trying to see everything at once. They had been traveling for 3 months to get here. 3 years of talks and messages had led to this moment. Humanity wanted to join the Galactic Council. Earth needed friends out here in the dark between stars. There were too many dangers for humans to face alone. The hallway they walked through was filled with creatures Jake had only seen in pictures before. Tall beings made of living crystal walked past without looking at the humans. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. These were the Viridians, and they owned the biggest empire in the galaxy. A group of lizard-like creatures stood near a doorway. They were the Saurians, and they looked mean. Sharp teeth showed when they opened their mouths to talk. Their eyes followed the humans as they passed. Jake could tell they did not like what they saw. Floating balls of light drifted by overhead. These were the Lumians, beings made of pure energy who thought they were better than everyone else. When one came close to Dr. Parker, she tried to say hello. The light ball just moved away without any response. "They think we are nothing," Ryan said quietly, all of them. "Maybe," Jake replied. "But we are here now. That has to count for something." A robot guide led them to the council chamber. The room was even bigger than the hallways. 12 different species sat in a circle around a speaking area in the center. Each group had their own section with seats made for their body types. The leader was something called Speaker Zixtara. She was a Viridian, one of the crystal beings, but much larger than the others they had seen. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music mixed with the ringing of bells. "Humans of Earth," she said, "you have asked to join our council. We have studied your world and your people. We have questions." Jake stepped forward. "We are ready to answer." A Saurian leader stood up. His name was War Chief Greyktal, and he looked even meaner than the others. "Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. What can you offer the galaxy?" Dr. Parker opened her case and pulled out a small device. "We offer different ways of thinking. We solve problems in ways you might not expect. Our minds work differently because our world is different." A floating Lumian pulsed with bright light. "Your world is a death trap. We have seen the reports. Poisonous creatures everywhere, weather that kills. Diseases that eat flesh. How did you survive?" "We learned to fight," Ryan said. "Everything on Earth wants to kill everything else. We learned to be smart, to be tough, to never give up." The crystal speaker made a sound like breaking glass. Jake thought she might be laughing. "Fighting is not wisdom. We have moved beyond such crude methods. Energy weapons solve all problems now. Physical violence is for animals." War Chief Greyktal nodded. "Humans could not last 1 day against real military forces. Your metal, projectile weapons are toys. Our plasma cannons would melt your ships before you could fire a single shot." More aliens spoke up. They all said the same thing in different ways. Humans were too primitive, too violent, too stupid to understand real technology. Some thought humans might make good pets or workers for the more advanced species. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. These creatures had never faced real danger. They lived safe lives in their perfect worlds with their perfect technology. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle. After hours of questions and insults disguised as concerns, Speaker Zixtara made the decision. "Humans will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. However, you may not expand beyond your home system. You must accept protection from Council forces. You will follow all our laws and rules." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew humans needed time to learn about their new neighbors. We accept these terms. As the humans prepared to leave the chamber, alarms began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed on every wall. The aliens all started talking at once in their different languages. A young Viridian ran into the chamber. His crystal body was cracked with stress. "Speaker Zixthara, long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching our galaxy. The Devourers have found us." The chamber erupted in panic. Creatures Jake had never seen before ran for the exits. The proud Saurians looked scared for the first time. Even the energy beings seemed to flicker with fear. Jake grabbed Dr. Parker's arm. "What are Devourers?" She was already pulling up files on her portable computer. "According to the database, they are an extragalactic species. They consume entire star systems. No one has ever successfully fought them off." Speaker Zixthara's musical voice now sounded like breaking metal. "All council species must prepare for war. The Devourers have consumed 3 galaxies. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They only hunger." Jake looked around at the panicking aliens and made a decision that would change everything. He activated his emergency communicator and sent a message back to Earth. 2 words that would wake up something the galaxy had never seen before. Scorched Earth. 3 days after the alarms rang on Nexus Prime, the Devourer fleet arrived at the edge of the galaxy like a plague of metal locusts. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Defiance, watching the long-range sensor readings with growing horror. The enemy ships were not built like anything humans had ever seen. They looked alive, like giant sea creatures swimming through space instead of sailing through it. The first reports came in from the Outer Rim systems. The Viridian Empire's crystal ships, which the aliens had bragged about for hours, shattered like glass bottles dropped on concrete. These ships had energy shields that could stop any known weapon, but the Devourer bioships simply ignored them. Acid cannons melted through crystal hulls in seconds. Living metal reached out like tentacles and crushed entire battle groups. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Hayes sat in the communication center, listening to distress calls flooding in from across the galaxy. His job was to coordinate evacuation efforts, but there was nowhere safe to run. The Devourers moved faster than any ship the Council species had ever built. They did not stop to rest or refuel. They just kept coming, eating everything in their path like army ants stripping a forest bare. The Saurian home system fell on the second day. War Chief Gregtal, who had laughed at human weapons just days before, sent his final transmission from the bridge of his burning flagship. "Tell the Council that pride means nothing when death comes calling. The Devourers do not care how advanced we think we are." Captain Turner watched the tactical display update in real time. Red markers showed Devourer positions spreading through the galaxy like an infection. Blue markers for friendly forces disappeared one by one. The quantum weapons that Council species relied on did absolutely nothing against bio-armor that seemed to absorb energy and grow stronger from it. Dr. Lisa Parker worked frantically in her temporary lab on Nexus Prime, studying what little data they had about Devourer biology. The enemy ships were not just vessels, but living creatures bred for war. Their hulls could heal damage in minutes. Their weapons were organs that fired concentrated acid or launched smaller bioships like antibodies attacking a virus. "They adapt to everything," she told Admiral Morrison during their emergency briefing. "Every energy weapon used against them just teaches them how to defend against it better." The Lumians tried their light-based attacks, and the Devourers absorbed the energy and used it to power their own weapons. The Carillion hegemony made their stand at the Titan Nebula. These aliens had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Captain Turner monitored their battle through intercepted communications. For 6 hours, it looked like the Carillions might actually win. Their quantum torpedoes were doing real damage to the bioships. Then, the Devourers adapted. Their armor shifted and changed until the quantum weapons became useless. The bioships grew new organs specifically designed to counter Carillion technology. Within an hour, the entire hegemony fleet was destroyed or consumed. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes received evacuation orders from the remaining council governments. Civilian ships packed with refugees fled toward the galactic core, but the devourers were faster. Transport vessels full of families disappeared into the bio-ship's digestive chambers. Entire colonies that had taken centuries to build were consumed. In hours, on Nexus Prime, the council convened an emergency session. Speaker Zixthara's crystal body flickered with patterns that Dr. Parker had learned meant extreme fear. The proud aliens who had dismissed humans as primitives now begged for any help they could get. "Our weapons are useless," reported the Aquarian. Collective's representative threw a translation device. "The bio-ships adapt faster than we can modify our technology. They learn from every attack. Illumian energy being pulsed weakly in the chamber. We tried everything. Light weapons, particle beams, focused plasma streams. Nothing works for more than a few minutes before they develop immunity." Admiral Morrison watched the chaos with the calm expression of someone who had seen war before. While the aliens panicked and argued about retreat options, he was thinking about something else entirely. Every council species used clean energy weapons. They had evolved beyond what they called primitive physical violence, but humans remembered different kinds of war. Captain Turner received new orders through the secure human communication channel. All human vessels are to return to Earth immediately. Emergency mobilization protocols are now in effect. He looked at his small crew of 35 people on a ship that the council species considered barely worthy of cargo hauling. The Defiance carried no energy weapons, no quantum torpedoes, no particle beam arrays, just electromagnetic railguns, designed for moving cargo, and a few chemical explosive missiles left over from the ship's previous military service. Dr. Parker was studying biosamples recovered from destroyed council ships when she made a discovery that changed everything. The Devourer bio-armor was incredibly effective against directed energy, but the cell structure showed weaknesses that energy-dependent species would never notice. They adapt to counter energy weapons because that is all they have ever faced? She explained to Morrison. But look at this cellular matrix. It has no defense against simple kinetic impact. A rock thrown hard enough would punch right through it. Admiral Morrison activated his emergency communicator and sent a message that would travel faster than light back to Earth. The message was simple, but would trigger the largest military mobilization in human history. Unknown hostiles have engaged council forces. All advanced weapons ineffective against bioadaptive armor. Recommend immediate deployment of conventional kinetic systems. Repeat, conventional kinetics only. Energy weapons are useless. As the Devourer fleet consumed 2 more star systems, something began stirring in the Sol system that the galaxy had never seen before. Factories that had been quiet for decades suddenly roared to life. Shipyards started retrofitting. Civilian vessels with weapons that council species had abandoned. Thousands of years ago, Earth was remembering how to make war the old-fashioned way. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes monitored communications from the human home system and smiled for the first time in days. While the advanced alien civilizations crumbled before an enemy they could not understand, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy what 10,000 years of continuous warfare had taught them. Sometimes the most effective weapon was not the most advanced one. Captain Turner set course for Earth, leaving behind a galaxy in flames and aliens who had finally learned that evolution did not always mean improvement. Behind him, the Devourers continued their feast, unaware that they had just awakened something that had been sleeping at the bottom of a gravity well. The apex predators of Earth were coming to hunt. Earth responded to Admiral Morrison's call with the speed and efficiency of a predator that had been hunting for 10,000 years. President Angela Davis stood before the emergency session of the United Nations, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's entire history of warfare. Every nation, every corporation, every individual who can contribute to our war effort will do so immediately, she declared. This is not about politics or borders. This is about survival. We either stand together as one species or we fall separately as scattered tribes. Within 6 hours of her speech, the Luna shipyards were working around the clock. Ships that had been carrying cargo between Earth and Mars were being stripped down and rebuilt. The modifications were not elegant or advanced by galactic standards, but they were effective in ways the aliens could never understand. General Paul Martinez coordinated the massive mobilization from his command center deep inside Cheyenne Mountain. The man had spent 30 years studying every major war in human history, from ancient battles fought with bronze swords to the nuclear exchanges that had nearly ended civilization. Now all that knowledge was being put to use against an enemy that had never faced anything like human warfare. Mount the rail guns from the asteroid mining stations on every ship big enough to carry them, he ordered his logistics coordinators. I do not care if it makes the ships look ugly. Pretty does not win wars. Commander Rachel Torres led the technical teams, responsible for installing weapon systems that would have horrified the peace-loving council species. Nuclear warheads that had been banned by galactic law were loaded onto converted passenger liners. Chemical explosive warheads filled the cargo holds of merchant vessels. Even old-fashioned gunpowder weapons were being manufactured in quantities not seen since the World Wars. Captain Dan Foster walked through the shipyard examining his new command, a converted ore hauler called the New York. The ship had been built to carry rocks from the asteroid belt back to Earth. Now it bristled with electromagnetic railguns and chemical rocket launchers. The crew compartments had been expanded to hold 200 volunteers, most of them former military personnel, who had answered the call without hesitation. She is not much to look at, said Chief Engineer Bob Wilson, patting the hull of the New York with genuine affection. But she is built tough, and she will keep running even when everything else breaks down. Dr. Lisa Parker worked frantically in her new laboratory, analyzing every piece of data about Devourer biology that the fleeing council ships had managed to transmit. What she found confirmed her worst fears and her greatest hopes at the same time. The bio-armor adapts to energy weapons by changing its molecular structure, she explained to a room full of military officers who had never thought they would be planning an interstellar war. But adaptation takes time and energy. The Devourers have never faced kinetic weapons because every species they encountered had evolved beyond physical projectiles. Colonel Steve Clark, a former Marine who had volunteered to command a converted mining ship called the Chicago, raised his hand. So you are saying that a good, old-fashioned bullet will work better than all their fancy energy weapons? Exactly, Dr. Parker replied. A kinetic projectile moving at high velocity will punch through bio-armor like it is not even there. The cellular structure cannot adapt fast enough to stop something moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The first human battle group launched from Earth orbit 3 days after the mobilization began. 12 vessels that would have embarrassed any proper military by galactic standards formed up behind Captain Foster's flagship. They carried no energy shields, no quantum computers, no artificial intelligence systems, just humans with simple weapons and the accumulated knowledge of a species that had never stopped fighting. Lieutenant Jenny Walsh commanded the USS Montana, another converted mining vessel. Her cargo hold was filled with depleted uranium rounds for the railguns, each projectile designed to punch through armor by sheer kinetic force. The rounds were simple, stupid, and incredibly effective against any target that relied on energy absorption for defense. We are not trying to outthink them, she told her crew during the final briefing before departure. We are going to outfight them. Every human who has ever lived has been a warrior. That is how we survived on a world that tried to kill us every single day. The human fleet received constant updates as they traveled toward the war zone. 3 more star systems had fallen to the Devourers. The Corellian hegemony was completely destroyed. The Aquarian Collective's underwater cities had been drained dry. Only the galactic core remained, protected by the last desperate council fleets that knew they were buying time for an inevitable defeat. Captain Foster studied the tactical reports and felt something that the council species had forgotten how to feel. He was not afraid of the Devourers, he was angry. These creatures had come into his galaxy and started killing everything they found. That made them enemies, and humans had been dealing with enemies since they first picked up sharp sticks in the African savannah. All ships, this is New York actual, he transmitted to his small fleet as they approached the battle zone. Remember what we are fighting for? Every human who ever lived. Every human who will ever be born. Every dream we have ever had about walking among the stars. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. We show these things what happens when you threaten Earth. Dr. Parker monitored the fleet from her safe position aboard a communications vessel. She had loaded the ships with biological weapons that would have horrified the peaceful council species. Engineered viruses designed to attack devour bioships at the cellular level. Bacteria developed from Earth's most aggressive organisms. Chemical weapons that would dissolve organic matter on contact. The galaxy had forgotten that warfare was not just about energy and technology. Sometimes the most effective weapon was a disease that ate your enemy from the inside out. General Martinez received reports from scouts who had observed the main devourer fleet. The bioships were massive, some larger than Earth's moon. They moved through space like living creatures, which they essentially were. Their weapons were organs that fired concentrated death. Their armor was skin that could heal and adapt to any threat except the kind that humans, specialized in. The human fleet approached the edge of council space, where the last alien defenders were making their final stand. Captain Foster opened a channel to the remaining council ships and spoke words that would echo through galactic history. This is the Human Battle Group, New York. We are here to help. Clear the field and let us show you how Earth makes war. Behind the small human fleet, hundreds more ships were already launching from Earth. The industrial might of humanity, which had built cities and conquered a hostile world, was now focused on a single goal. The Devourers were about to learn why humans were the only species that had named their world after dirt and still managed to reach the stars. The human fleet arrived at Kepler's gate to find 3 Devourer bioships feeding on the orbital defense platforms like massive parasites. Each bioship was the size of a small moon, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life. Acid weapons reached out like tentacles, dissolving the metal stations that had protected this hyperspace junction for thousands of years. Captain Foster stood on the bridge of the New York and watched the destruction through his simple optical telescope. The Council species had built those platforms with their most advanced technology. Energy shields, quantum armor, particle beam weapons, none of it had mattered. The bioships consumed everything they touched, growing larger and stronger with each meal. All ships, this is Foster, he transmitted to his small fleet of converted civilian vessels. We are going to do something that every military academy in the galaxy would call insane. We are going to charge directly at enemies that outmass us by 1,000,000 to 1 and try to kill them with rocks and explosives. Lieutenant Jenny Walsh responded from the USS Montana. Understood, Captain. The crew is ready. We have been practicing this our whole lives. Commander Steve Clark's voice came through from the Chicago. My ship is loaded with enough nuclear warheads to crack a moon. Let's see how these things like a taste of human hospitality. The plan violated every rule of civilized warfare that the Council species followed. No elegant maneuvering. No sophisticated tactics. No attempts at communication or negotiation. Just overwhelming violence applied with surgical precision to the enemy's weakest points. The USS Montana led the attack. Lieutenant Walsh had spent 2 years mining asteroids in the belt, using railguns to move rocks the size of buildings. Now she was using those same railguns to fire depleted uranium rounds at significant fractions of light speed. The first salvo punched through the bio-armor of the nearest Devourer ship like bullets through paper. The bioship tried to heal the wounds, but kinetic damage was not something it could adapt to quickly. The uranium rounds had created massive internal explosions that tore through organs and structural supports. Green fluid that might have been blood sprayed into space through dozens of holes. Direct hit, Walsh reported with calm satisfaction. Target is venting atmosphere and showing signs of structural collapse. Continuing attack? Commander Clark's Chicago launched a spread of nuclear torpedoes at the second bioship. The Devourers had learned to absorb energy from particle beams and plasma cannons, but they had no defense against simple nuclear fusion. The warheads detonated against the organic hull with the force of miniature suns. Massive chunks of bioship were simply vaporized. The creature's regenerative abilities could not replace matter that had been converted to pure energy. It writhed in space like a wounded animal, its acid weapons firing wildly in all directions. Nuclear weapons are effective, Clark transmitted. Repeat, nuclear weapons are highly effective against bioarmor. The target is severely damaged and appears to be dying. Captain Foster coordinated the smaller vessels in suicide runs against the third bioship's weapon clusters. These were civilian volunteers flying converted cargo haulers loaded with chemical explosives. They had no military training, just the desperate courage of people defending their home. The first ship to reach the bioship was a converted passenger liner called the Boston. Captain Tony Phillips had volunteered along with his entire crew of 43 civilians. They rammed their ship directly into what looked like a weapon port and detonated every explosive they carried. "Tell my family I love them," Phillips transmitted as his ship disappeared in a ball of fire that took out an entire section of bioship hull. "Tell Earth we did our job." Lieutenant Colonel Sam Hayes monitored the battle from his communications post and recorded every detail for the analysts back home. The bioships were trying to adapt to human weapons, but their evolutionary responses were too slow. They could not develop immunity to high-velocity metal projectiles or nuclear fusion reactions. "The enemy is attempting to modify their armor structure," he reported, "but the adaptations are taking too long. Human weapons are causing faster damage than the bioships can repair." Dr. Lisa Parker watched the sensor readings and felt a mixture of horror and satisfaction. The Devourers were dying in ways they had never experienced before. Energy weapons gave them time to adapt and evolve. Kinetic weapons and chemical explosives just destroyed them faster than their biology could respond. The largest bioship attempted to retreat when it realized that these new enemies were actually dangerous. Captain Foster saw the movement on his sensors and made a decision that would become legend throughout the galaxy. "All remaining ships, form up on the New York," he ordered. "We are not letting this thing escape to warn the others about human weapons." The chase lasted for 6 hours as the wounded bioship tried to reach the safety of the main Devourer fleet. Captain Foster pushed his converted or hauler beyond safe limits, the railguns overheating from constant firing. His crew worked like machines, loading uranium rounds and firing them at the fleeing enemy. "Captain, we are gaining on it," reported Chief Engineer Wilson. "But the reactor is running at 110% capacity. We cannot maintain this speed much longer." Foster looked at the tactical display showing the bioship just barely out of effective weapons range. Behind them, the other human ships were falling behind, their civilian engines not designed for high-speed pursuit. In a few more minutes, the enemy would escape. "All stop," Foster ordered. "Shut down the railguns and route all power to the reactor." Wilson stared at him in confusion. "Captain, what are you planning?" Foster smiled with the expression of a predator that had cornered its prey. "We are going to ram that thing. Full power to the engines. Set the reactor to overload on my command." "Sir, that will destroy us along with the target." "That is the point, Chief. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure the enemy loses worse than you do." The New York accelerated toward the bioship like a guided missile. Foster opened a channel to the rest of the human fleet and spoke his final words. "This is Foster. Mission accomplished. The gate is secure. Tell Earth that humans do not run from monsters." The converted ore hauler struck the bioship's core at nearly 10% of light speed. The reactor detonation created a brief new star that was visible from 3 systems away. When the light faded, both ships were gone, leaving only expanding clouds of plasma and debris. Lieutenant Walsh assumed command of the remaining human vessels and surveyed the battlefield. 3 moon-sized Devourer ships were dead hulks drifting in space. The hyperspace gate to the galactic core remained open and secure. The cost had been 8 human ships and 4,000 volunteers, who would never see Earth again, but for the first time since the invasion began, Devourer ships had been destroyed instead of destroying everything they encountered. The bioships that had seemed invincible to the Council species had been killed by humans using weapons that the galaxy considered primitive. "All ships, this is Montana Actual," Walsh transmitted to the survivors. "Set course for Nexus Prime. We have a report to make to the Galactic Council." As the human ships limped toward the station, news of their victory spread through the surviving Council species like wildfire. The primitive humans had done something that the combined advanced fleets could not accomplish. They had proven that the Devourers could be killed. Dr. Parker compiled her battle analysis as they traveled. The data would change how the galaxy understood warfare forever. Sometimes the most sophisticated enemy could be defeated by the simplest weapons, applied with enough violence and determination. The Council species were about to learn that humans had not forgotten the most important lesson of evolution. It was not the smartest or strongest that survived. It was the most adaptable predator. News of humanity's victory at Kepler's Gate spread through the surviving Council species faster than hyperspace communications could carry it. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Zixthara stared at the tactical recordings with something her crystalline species had not felt in thousands of years. Fear, mixed with hope in equal measure. Admiral Morrison stood in the station's command center, coordinating humanity's next moves while alien representatives crowded around him like students seeking wisdom from a master. These same beings had dismissed humans as primitive savages just days before. Now they begged for human military assistance. "Show us again how your projectile weapons work," pleaded the Aquarian representative through his translation device. "Our energy weapons are useless. The bioships absorb everything we fire at them." War Chief Gregtol approached Morrison with his head lowered in a gesture of submission that no Saurian had shown to another species in recorded history. The Proud Warrior's plasma weapons had proven completely ineffective against Devourer bio-armor, while human railguns punched through it like tissue paper. "Admiral Morrison," Gregtol said in his broken English, "my people offer our ships and our lives to serve under human command. We have weapons but do not know how to use them against these enemies." "You do." Morrison studied the tactical displays showing Devourer movements throughout the galaxy. The enemy had paused their advance after losing 3 bioships at Kepler's Gate, but they were already adapting their strategy. Intelligence reports indicated they were consuming uninhabited systems to breed new bioforms, specifically designed to counter kinetic weapons. Dr. Lisa Parker established her new laboratory in a section of Nexus Prime that had been quickly converted for human use. Council scientists who had once looked down on human research methods now worked alongside her with desperate enthusiasm. The xenobiology data they were gathering would revolutionize galactic understanding of warfare. The bioships can adapt to energy weapons because they have encountered them in other galaxies, she explained to a mixed group of human and alien researchers. But they have never faced kinetic projectiles, chemical weapons, or nuclear explosives because every species they conquered had evolved beyond such primitive methods. Captain Lisa Green led the second wave of human ships arriving from Earth. Her fleet comprised 30 vessels armed with humanity's newest innovation, kinetic bombardment platforms that carried no sophisticated technology, just tungsten rods accelerated to devastating velocities by electromagnetic launchers. "These ships are not pretty," she told the assembled council representatives during her briefing. "They do not have energy shields or quantum computers, but they carry enough kinetic penetrators to crack a moon in half." The tide of war began shifting as human fleets arrived at threatened systems throughout the galaxy. Commander Jack Sullivan's task force saved the Lumian homeworld using conventional missiles loaded with white phosphorus. The chemical weapon burned through bioarmor like acid through flesh, creating wounds that the regenerative systems could not heal. The enemy attempted to adapt their armor to resist the phosphorus, Sullivan reported after the battle. But chemical weapons work differently than energy weapons. You cannot evolve immunity to something that dissolves your cellular structure on contact. Speaker Zixthura convened daily strategy meetings where human officers taught alien commanders the basics of kinetic warfare. The crystal being's musical voice now carried notes of respect when she addressed Morrison and his staff. "We have learned much from studying your methods," she admitted during one session. "Council species abandoned physical weapons because we believed energy was more elegant. We forgot that elegance means nothing if it does not achieve victory." Dr. Parker's research. Teams made breakthrough discoveries daily. The Devourers had evolved in galaxies where every intelligent species followed the same technological development path. Energy weapons, force fields, quantum computers. When they encountered such civilizations, adaptation was simple because the enemy capabilities were predictable, but humans had taken a different evolutionary path. Earth's hostile environment had forced humanity to master every possible method of warfare. Chemical weapons from World War I, nuclear explosives from the Cold War, kinetic projectiles from the space age. The Devourers had no framework for defending against such diverse threats. President Davis authorized the deployment of humanity's most closely guarded secrets: antimatter bombs that had been developed in black-budget programs, artificial singularity, generators that could create miniature black holes. These weapons represented humanity's mastery of both primitive and advanced technologies. The main Devourer fleet responded to human interference by changing tactics. Instead of direct confrontation, they began consuming uninhabited systems to rapidly breed new bioforms. Scout reports indicated they were developing creatures specifically designed to counter kinetic weapons. "They are learning," Morrison told his staff during their morning briefing. "But they are learning to fight the last war instead of the next one. Every adaptation they make to counter our current weapons gives us information about their biology." Commander Tony Phillips led a deep reconnaissance mission into Devourer-controlled space using a heavily modified stealth ship. What he found confirmed humanity's worst fears and greatest opportunities. The bioships were indeed adapting, but their changes made them vulnerable to completely different types of attack. The new bioforms have developed dense armor specifically designed to stop kinetic projectiles, he reported. But the additional mass has made them slower and less maneuverable. They sacrifice speed for protection. Dr. Parker analyzed Phillips' data and smiled for the first time in weeks. "If they want to play evolutionary games, we can play too. The new armor will stop our current weapons, but it will be completely useless against what we develop next." Human research teams began working on weapons that would exploit the Devourer's latest adaptations. Plasma cutters that used focused magnetic fields to slice through dense armor. Gravity bombs that could crush bioships regardless of their protective systems. Biological weapons specifically designed to attack the new cellular structures. The galaxy watched as humanity demonstrated something the Council species had forgotten. Warfare was not about having the most advanced technology. It was about adapting faster than your enemy and being willing to use any method necessary to achieve victory. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes monitored communications from Earth and smiled at what he heard. The industrial might of humanity was fully mobilized now. Factories that had been building consumer goods were manufacturing weapons. Civilian ships were being converted into instruments of war. The entire species was focused on a single goal. The Devourers had made the mistake of threatening Earth. Now they were about to learn why humans were the only species that had evolved on a death world and still managed to reach the stars. Admiral Morrison opened a secure channel to the largest human fleet ever assembled. Now approaching the edge of Devourer space, his message was simple but carried the weight of 10,000 years of human warfare. "All ships, this is Morrison. The enemy has adapted to our initial tactics. Time to show them what happens when humans get creative. Remember, we are not just fighting for the Council species. We are fighting to prove that Earth breeds the galaxy's apex predators." The final phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity was ready to demonstrate why they had never lost a war they were determined to win. The final battle of the Devourer War took place in the Andromeda approach, where the main enemy hive fleet had gathered like a cancer preparing to consume the galactic core. Billions of bioships stretched across space in formations that defied comprehension. Their collective mass was equivalent to a small star system, and they pulsed with alien hunger that had already devoured 3 galaxies. General Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Terran Pride, Admiral Morrison's new flagship built specifically for this moment. Around them spread the largest human fleet ever assembled. 200 ships carrying the combined military might of Earth and her colonies. Some were purpose-built warships bristling with advanced weapons. Others were converted civilian vessels crewed by volunteers who understood they might not survive the day. "All ships, this is Morrison," the admiral transmitted to his fleet. "Today we end this war. The Devourers chose to come to our galaxy. They chose to threaten our worlds. They chose to make enemies of Earth. Now they learn what that choice costs." The human fleet had learned from previous battles. Instead of charging directly at the enemy like brave but foolish heroes, they implemented systematic destruction. Captain Kelly Brooks led the first wave, targeting Devourer breeding ships and resource gatherers rather than the massive combat forms. Her squadron carried fusion rams, vessels designed to achieve near-light speeds and detonate their reactors inside enemy formations. "From Earth with love," Brooks transmitted as her ship accelerated toward a cluster of bioships that were spawning new attack forms. The explosion created a brief star that sterilized a cubic light-hour of space. The Devourers responded with their new strategy, releasing clouds of adaptive microorganisms designed to consume kinetic projectiles before they could reach their targets. The bioclouds spread through space like living fog, dissolving uranium rounds and nuclear warheads with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Lisa Parker watched from her command ship and activated humanity's counter-strategy. "All ships, deploy biological weapons package 7. Time to show these things what 10 billion years of Earth evolution looks like." Human ships launched payloads of engineered viruses that attacked Devourer bioships at the cellular level. These were not clean energy weapons that the aliens could adapt to. They were diseases developed from Earth's most aggressive bacteria, modified to specifically target the cellular structures that the bioships used for adaptation. "Biological weapons are effective," reported Captain Don Chun from the USS Boston. "Enemy microorganisms are being consumed by our viruses faster than they can evolve immunity. The bioclouds are collapsing." Admiral Morrison coordinated with the surviving council fleets that had agreed to serve under human command. The Viridians provided energy shields while human ships delivered kinetic strikes. Saurian vessels served as mobile platforms for human weapons teams. The Lumians used their light manipulation abilities to guide human targeting systems with deadly precision. The turning point came when Commander Tony Phillips led a desperate assault on the Devourer Hive Queen ship, a bioform, the size of Earth's moon that served as the central brain for the entire fleet. His vessel, the USS Chicago, had been equipped with humanity's most devastating weapon, a contained black hole generator that could create gravitational anomalies on demand. "All ships, clear the area around the Hive Queen," Phillips transmitted, as his ship accelerated toward the massive bioform. "I'm going to introduce these things to some basic physics." The black hole generator activated just as the Chicago made contact with the Hive Queen's hull. The explosion was unlike anything a galaxy had ever witnessed. Space itself seemed to tear open as artificial gravity crushed bioships in a sphere of destruction that consumed a tenth of the enemy fleet. Faced with their first real defeat in eons, the surviving Devourers attempted to retreat to hyperspace. But Captain Amy Rodriguez was waiting for them in the fastest human ship ever built, a converted racing yacht loaded with quantum torpedoes and pure human determination. "You came to the wrong galaxy," she transmitted on all frequencies as her ship pursued the fleeing bioforms. "Earth remembers every enemy that has ever threatened her children." The chase lasted 3 days as human ships hunted down scattered Devourer survivors. No quarter was given, no mercy was shown. The aliens who had consumed entire civilizations learned what it meant to face a species that had perfected warfare on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. When the last bioship was destroyed, silence fell across the battlefield. 200 human ships hung in space, surrounded by the drifting remains of an enemy that had seemed invincible just months before. The cost had been terrible. 60 human vessels were gone, along with 8,000 volunteers who had given their lives to protect not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. 6 months after the final battle, the Galactic Council convened in special session. Speaker Zix Thara approached Admiral Morrison with a new title that no alien had ever held: Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense. The restrictions on human expansion were not just lifted but completely reversed. Council species competed to offer humans colony sites and military partnerships. War Chief Graktal restructured the entire Saurian military around human tactical principles. The Carillions abandoned energy weapons in favor of human kinetic technology. The Lumians established exchange programs to study human methods of warfare and survival. Dr. Parker published her definitive study on combat evolution, showing how humanity's violent history on Earth had created the galaxy's most effective warriors. The research became required reading at every military academy from the Galactic Rim to the core worlds. President Davis signed the Terran Hegemony Act, establishing humanity as the galaxy's primary military power. The irony was not lost on human leadership. By proving they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, they had become the most necessary. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Terran command station, watching human patrol ships move through routes once dominated by elder species. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the difference between technological advancement and evolutionary effectiveness. In the final transmission of the war, long-range sensors detected another threat approaching from the Galactic Rim. Admiral Morrison read the report and smiled with the expression of a predator that had found new prey. He opened a channel to Earth with a message that would echo through the cosmos. Unknown hostiles detected approaching our galaxy. All human fleets report ready status. Standard response protocols are authorized. The message was received by a species that had conquered a hostile world, learned to make war against impossible odds, and emerged as the apex predators of an entire galaxy. The next threat would learn what the Devourers had discovered too late. When Earth's children went hunting, even the stars took notice. The age of human dominance in the galaxy had begun, built on the simple truth that sometimes the most primitive solution was also the most effective. Humanity had proven that evolution was not always about becoming more advanced. Sometimes it was about becoming more dangerous. Morrison watched the stars and knew that whatever came next, the galaxy would be ready. Earth had taught them all a valuable lesson about the true nature of apex predators. They were not the biggest or strongest or most advanced. They were the ones that never stopped fighting until everything that threatened them was dead.